Hi there. What I'm going to talk to you today about is practicing improvisation and expanding your melodic vocabulary through variation. My name's Graeme Norris. I'm teaching saxophone here at the Jazz Music Institute in Brisbane. I have been playing jazz for 35 years now, initially on clarinet, but saxophone for a long time. And I have played all over the world. I've played in Australia and Europe and New York for several years also. And so I have experience of playing music all around the world with different people. And that's quite appropriate because here at JMI, we want to create a world where everyone can play jazz. So the subject of today's class is expanding your vocabulary and your library of ideas. So you can do this with everything, with scales, with arpeggios. You can play scales up and down and up, in thirds, in fourths, in fifths, in sixths, in sevenths, leading tones, etc., etc. But I'm going to relate it specifically to playing through a chord progression, the 2-5-1 progression, simply because it is a very common tool or part of the jazz standard repertoire, and hopefully it'll help you. So I initially sort of really discovered this approach or concept when I was analysing my own playing, and I had received some feedback from teachers and from fellow musicians. And I really discovered that, particularly when I was playing at faster tempos, I tended to start all my phrases on beat one. And so I wanted to do something to fix that. And as well as that, I have done a lot of study and transcribing of Sonny Rollins. And through that, I really became aware that throughout his whole career, which is still a very long career, he would take tiny little motifs and slightly vary them or displace them rhythmically or embellish them or augment them. And this would instill in them a sense of difference, even though it was the same material. And this, he's had a career of 70 years as a musician. So it creates variety in what you're doing, but I think it's very important because it really develops and entrenches your own sound, which is really important as a jazz musician. You end up with your own vocabulary, your own things that personify who you are. So improvising jazz is like talking. It's conversational. So we can communicate with each other. I can communicate with you here today because we're speaking the same language and I know words and I have learnt how to construct sentences and phrases. But each of us says things slightly in our own way. We're all wired slightly differently. And so we can use our own slang, or we can use our own rhythm or our own emphasis. And practicing improvisation from a variation aspect, I think, has the same effect in terms of improvising over a tune. So what I'm going to do, the practical side of this class is this. I'm going to play a phrase, a diatonic phrase in the key of C on the tenor saxophone. So that's in the key of B flat for concert instruments. I'm going to play a phrase that is a 2-bar phrase. It's going to be 2 beats of D minor 7, 2 beats of G7, and then resolving to C major in the second bar of the phrase. So I'm not going to play any notes that are outside the harmony. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it starts on beat 1, it resolves well, all the notes are within the harmony, all good. So I can do that if I want. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play the same phrase, exactly the same notes, in exactly the same direction, but I'm going to start the phrase on beat 2. So see if you can follow along and see what it feels like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it's very interesting because it's the same phrase, but when I play it starting on beat 2, the ending suddenly becomes off the beat rather than on the beat. In the original one, the ending of the phrase was right on beat 1, 3, 4. 1 and. If I do it the second way, 1, 2, 3, 4, So it's sort of, the phrase is left hanging. The second phrase to me has more of a sense of a question about it. Da ba da ba da ba da ba da ah. It sort of leaves the phrase sort of hanging, like I said. Whereas the first phrase tends to be more of an answer, a statement. And the second phrase has more rhythmic interest because of the way it ends. So, I mean, just by shifting the phrase from beat 1 to beat 2, all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is interesting, this is enjoyable, this is fun. So I'm going to play several phrases now just using those notes, but employing different rhythms. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3, 4. So now I'm employing triplets, da ba da da ba da da ba da da, and so you're anticipating the resolution into the second bar. So now I'm going to start on beat 1 and, on the and of 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm resolving on the A, which is a different sound again. 3, 4. Da ba da. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm using 1 and, but now I'm employing triplets as well. I could employ quarter note triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or I could employ 16th notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see I'm just repeating the same notes, but I'm just saying what happens if I do it like this? What happens if I start there? What happens if I employ some different rhythms? It's extremely enjoyable practice. You really get a sense of the expansiveness of the creative universe. It's endless, pretty much, once you employ notes and rhythms. And, I like the idea of doing one thing, but practicing several things. So at the moment, I'm practicing harmony, I'm practicing finger technique, I'm practicing articulation, I'm practicing rhythm. So by doing one exercise and just saying to myself, how else can I do it? I end up practicing 4 or 5 different practice techniques, which is a good way to practice. So that's just playing those notes. So, I could, once I've done this for a while, I would say to myself, well, I can either do what I've just done in several different keys, do the same thing in the key of D flat, so it becomes more challenging. Or I could say, well, maybe I can start introducing some passing tones. See what happens there? So let's try that. So now I'll try some passing tones. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm introducing a passing tone to the third of the G chord, and then I'm doing chromatic stuff on the C chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I've got a passing tone to the third of the G chord, the third of the 5 chord that is, chromatic on the C chord, passing tone to the third of the C chord. So just by doing this one little core harmony exercise, I've come up with 20, 30 different ideas of the same thing. And so it expands my vocabulary, and it gives me the sense that when I'm on stage, I may have a moment where I'll think, when no ideas are coming to me, but if I just go, okay, I've done this before, let's just play and see what happens, then something will be generated, an idea will be generated. It gives me confidence of that because it raises my awareness of the creative universe, basically. You can use this for your whole life and your whole career. So these days, I'm still doing this, but I'm doing it with more complex ideas, rhythmically and harmonically. And what I do now is I will work on something specific, and then when I find a good idea, I will write it down. So now I've got pages and pages and pages and folders full of ideas about how to play through certain progressions. And they're all mine, I mean, I'm sure that other people have done them in the past, but they feel like they're mine. And so I do this thing on I Got Rhythm in particular, and also on a tune called All God's Children, because I find those two tunes pretty challenging because they're sort of based in the same sort of harmony for a long time. And so I like to come up with ideas of different ways of getting through the harmony. That's what I was doing when this lesson started. I was playing through I Got Rhythm with various ways of playing through that 1-6-2-5, 3-6-2-5 progression. I hope you've enjoyed the program. And just a quick reminder, if you have any ideas that you would like to contribute, please do. If you have any, if you've experimented with this concept or technique before, please let us know. If you have any melodic ideas of your own that you've been working through, we'd love to hear them. And the good thing about JMI, one of the good things about JMI is that it gives you plenty of opportunities, performance opportunities, where you can practice what I've been talking about and apply what I've been talking about. So thanks for your time. Look forward to seeing you next time.